Thank you guys all for coming today. You never know what to expect on a rainy day. It's nice to see you guys all here. Someone asked me before if I was nervous, and I didn't feel that way. This is a talk that I've wanted to do for a long time, and now I feel really nervous. But that song was beautiful. It helped me calm down a little bit. Thank you, Natalie. So the first thing I want to say about this is that this is a huge honor for me to be able to talk about this topic. In your bulletin that BJ made is a list of angel number examples and a Bible verse that relates to what I'm going to share with you guys today. And this topic is one that has fascinated me for many years, but I've kind of had a tough time talking about and finding an outlet for it. The reason that I'm doing this today is because our Reverend BJ asked me to talk about numbers some time ago, and specifically the number 3. And when she asked me, I said, I'd love to. There's so many things about the number 3 I can say, especially like the master number 33. The master 33 represents the highest spiritual attainment that humans can attain to. It also relates to the ascended masters. It's the number of Jesus. It's widely believed that Jesus lived to be 33. He performed 33 miracles. King David reigned over his kingdom for 33 years. The human spine has 33 vertebrae. The word amen numerically adds up to 33, and I can go on and on. But as I got to thinking about how best to do this, I didn't feel comfortable just talking about the numbers and throwing out facts like I just did. I want to share experiences because they're kind of more valuable. And it's also very good information, kind of what the numbers mean and how to interpret them. But it's also very general in some way. So I want to share some things that kind of validate the information. And in a way, it's like the experiences, without telling the experiences, it's like the numbers are a spirit without a body. And so what I want to start with is how my obsession with these numbers came about. When I was about 10 years old, I used to walk around Sacramento, California with my rake, and I would go door to door asking people if I could do chores around their house to earn some extra money. And I would do this after school, and sometimes I would earn $5, and sometimes I would earn up to $20, but I'd always spend everything I made. And the reason for this is because if I went home, then somebody was going to spend this money for me in a way I didn't want to. So I'd go to the stores and buy things that I'd like, candy. But there was a particular store that I really always enjoyed going to, and that was the 7-Eleven. And they had everything I wanted: candy, Slurpees, Big Gulps, comic books, football cards, all the young things a nice 10-year-old would like, right? And so after that, through my teenage years, 7-Eleven kind of became my go-to place for anything I needed, even though the job switched. Fast forward about 25 years later, my mother passed away on July 11th, 2010. So I'd always thought of 7-Eleven as like my lucky numbers from when I was a child, and also probably pertaining to the famous dice game. But then after my mom passed away, it kind of became more of a sad number, more of a reminder of my mom. And I remember when it happened thinking, there's something about this number that means more, but I just don't understand quite what it is. And so after my mom passed away, I started noticing things like the number 1111. I would look at the clock and it would be 1111. I would go to the store and I'd buy something and my total would be 1111. And it was happening a lot, and so I asked my girlfriend at the time, what do you make of this? And she said, well, it means to make a wish. And so I was like, oh, I had never heard of that before. And so, but a year before that, I'd started studying metaphysics, and I thought, maybe there's something more to this. And I wanted to know more about this 1111, but the answers were slow to come. So then, about a year later, I'm a big football fan. And if you don't follow football, I apologize if I kind of skip over some things. There's probably just some assumptions I make about football because I know so much. But I'm watching the Denver Broncos play. It's my favorite team. They're in the playoffs. They hadn't been there in like 10 years. They had a miraculous season to make it there. Their quarterback was Tim Tebow. A lot of you guys might know who Tim Tebow is. He's a very polarizing figure. He never goes into a news conference without mentioning his love for Jesus and how Jesus has helped him. And so along with Tebow comes with the media circus, those that hate him, those that like him, etc. Well, Denver had gone on this playoff run that there's no way that they won some of these games without either divine intervention or his faith just going through the whole team and everybody believing that they could win when the odds were almost insurmountable. And so this is his first playoff game. The city's abuzz. It's a night game. Everybody's watching. The football world, the media. Tebow brings along his history of 2 national championships at the University of Florida, College Football Player of the Year. That night, it was January 8, 2012. 3 years to the day, he played in the national championship. And on his eye black, which is stuff that kind of reflects the light, he writes John 3:16. Of course, they go on to win the national championship. And the next day, 94 million people Googled John 3:16. 94 million. His response was, I can't believe 94 million people didn't know what that meant. Fast forward to this playoff game. They're playing the Pittsburgh Steelers, the conference champions from the year before. The only reason they're at home is because they happen to win a weaker division. And spoiler alert, Denver wins. But the outcome of the game is not the important thing. There's all this hype about it. Tebow decides to put John 3:16 on his eye black again. You go through the whole game, 60 minutes regulation. It's a tie, 23 all. Tebow didn't have a great game. He completed 9 passes in the game. 9. If you know anything about football, that's not a lot for a quarterback. If a quarterback completes 9 passes, generally you're on the losing end of it all. But there they were tied. Just to give you an idea, the opposing quarterback completed 22. So we get into the overtime. Denver wins the coin toss, so they're going to get the ball. They start on the 20-yard line. Tebow's stats, aside of the 9 completions, he had 236 yards in the regulation game time with 1 touchdown. Not spectacular by any means. So being it's his first playoff game, everybody's nervous. It seems like everybody in the stadium knows this is going to be a running play, right? You turn around, you hand it off to the running back, calm everybody's nerves, move right along. He goes out of the huddle, calls a play, takes the ball, he turns, but he fakes it to the running back, and then he steps back to pass. I'm just kind of setting the scene. He looks out. The safety came up, bit on the play fake, and Tebow's looking downfield, right outside of his John 3:16, throws the ball. His receiver's running across, catches him in stride. Receiver stiff arms a guy, runs down the sideline. He's got 2 guys to beat, stiff arms another one, scores a touchdown. They win the game. Everybody goes berserk. Tebow mania is in full force. And everybody just can't believe that they won this game. And it's the first time everybody's excited. Tebow's on his knee praying. And I, as a Broncos fan, of course, was going crazy as well. But the thing that was very interesting about this is that pass made him have 316 yards total passing in the game. And also, that 10th completion netted him 31.6 yards per completion. And now there were other numbers too, and I'll just share one. The media share for the 4th quarter of that game, if you guys all know what Nielsen ratings are, was 31.6. I didn't know what, I just knew God was saying something. I didn't know what, but I wanted to know more. And it was about 2.5 years later that I actually received an angel number message. I actually came to Unity that very same month of that playoff game, and I started learning a lot about Jesus, God, and metaphysics, and the numbers kind of came a little bit later. But it was the summer of 2014, and my wife was pregnant, and with our son. I started noticing number sequences, and I started noticing different ones, not 1111, but just different ones, but multiples. Like I would see, just for example, 444, something like that, multiple times, and I just didn't know why. And so then I started noticing that I would see some of these number sequences, like I'd see the clock, and then I'd see the same number on a car license plate, And most of these license plates have the letters GMF after it. And so I asked my wife, I said, what do you think this GMF means? And we talked about it, I Googled it, and at one point I came to the conclusion that GMF was some punk band from across the pond. And it wasn't until I made a routine drive to our favorite pizza place, and I pulled up, and on the license plate of that car was 7-Eleven GMF. And I just froze, and I was like, it's Mom. It's not the letters. It's the numbers. And so then I figured out that GMF just happened to be the latest issue of the DMV, and all the numbers I was seeing was all the new cars running around with GMF on there. But so I looked up the spiritual meaning of 7-Eleven, and I found a website, and it said 7-Eleven is a powerful spiritual message from the angelic and spiritual realms. To pay special attention to your thoughts and ideas as they're revealing the answers to your prayers and are giving you intuitive guidance in regards to the next steps on your divine life path. And then later it was said, you are also reminded that the emotional gratitude will speed up your manifestations, and the rest of it just didn't matter. It was the numbers, and this one meant gratitude, and of course it was tied to my mom, and I'd always been good at math, and I was really interested in these messages, but could these really be messages from angels from the spiritual realm? Could these really be messages from God? To me, that was kind of a scary proposition. Like, can God communicate with me this way? But it's also exciting, right? The thought of angels communicating through numbers, it brought a whirlwind of emotions, but after all it was settled, I was hooked and I was hungry for more. So I started researching as much as I could relating to God and numbers. So I found there are the angel numbers that I talked about, which are sequences that carry significant messages from the spiritual, with spiritual meaning to them. There's numerology, which this is the idea that your birthday and your name are like a blueprint for your life. They kind of tell you about your personality, and nothing happens by chance. By studying your numerology chart, you can understand cycles of your life and understand natural gifts. And it is fascinating and useful, but I just want to mention that Charles Fillmore, the founder of Unity, was not an advocate for numerology. So I kept the numerology references to a minimum here. And then there's sacred geometry, which this is really fascinating. It's the idea that everything in the universe can be calculated mathematically, and then there is a definite order based on mathematical law. And I love learning about this, but it wasn't answering my question about why was I seeing these numbers. So I started looking up the angel numbers more and more, and the specific site is called Sacred Scribes, if you guys ever need to look any numbers up. And it was written by Joanne Walmsley, and she started sometime in 2011. There's like single numbers, double digits, master numbers, recurring numbers, and things like that. And then she was doing it from 2011 until about last year, and the last number she did was 3,300, ironically enough. So at first these numbers appeared very vague, and it was really hard to decipher. And after a while I started getting better at it. I started seeing numbers that had meant something before. 1158, that was like an extension I had at a job. It mean whenever I'd see it, I always felt off, and I'd read it and it'd say, take time to meditate. So that became my prayer number, like go pray. 7-Eleven always shows up. Of course, that's my number of gratitude. And so the messages depend upon the placement of numbers. Like, for example, if it's at the beginning, it means something different. If it's in the middle, it means something different. But I don't want to get too much into that, because the angel numbers are personal, and so what might mean something to you could mean a little bit different thing to me. And sometimes the numbers are vague, like they're telling you, the angels are trying to tell you something about your life purpose, and or they're sending you positive love or energy. And then there are times when the numbers will just blow your mind. As I said, the messages are personal, but this one I'm about to tell you about is probably the most emotional. I'm going to set the stage, and some of you might remember this. Some of you are newer, but my wife and I are in the delivery room. It was a cesarean, against our wishes. She had just spent a god-awful amount of time in labor at home. We were trying to do a home birth, and she really wanted to do this home birth because her last experience at the hospital was not pleasant, and she wanted this to be a very pleasant experience for the first time of our son entering the world. And so home birth was plan A. Our son had other plans. Plan B was that the midwife said, if something goes wrong, you're going to go to the hospital. So there we were. My wife was kind of shaken. She was exhausted. Her dreams of having a home birth were gone. They were crushed. All the time we spent learning about home births, and the beauty of it all was not to be, our son's head was sideways, and so he couldn't be birthed naturally. So there we were. The blue curtain was to my left. On my right, I'm touching her face. I think I'm touching her hand. I'm not sure. I don't remember. The other thing I can see a few feet in front of me is the place where they're going to lay my son here in a few minutes. And I remember, like, I'm the one that has to tell her this is going to be okay. So I'm telling her, this is going to be okay. We have to have trust. We have to have faith in God. I know you're the one getting operated on, but there's a reason for everything. God has a plan. I can hear the doctors commenting. So I block that out. I'm trying to focus on her, and while I'm doing that, I'm silently begging that everything's going to be okay, that my son is going to have a good experience when he comes into the world, that the nurse who handles him is going to treat him like a person and not just a baby that's not going to remember anything. And I was also thinking about my mother, because she always bugged me to have a grandbaby for her, and I was kind of sad that she wasn't there to meet him. And then I heard a small cry. The nurse showed him to us briefly, and he was there. He was beautiful, but he was covered up in that birth slop. I looked at my wife, and she was kind of out of it in a way. But then the nurse says he weighs 7 pounds and 11 ounces. And I looked at my wife, and I just started to cry. And I think I don't remember how hard I cried. But at that moment, I felt like my mother 100% was in the room, number one. And it was also just an assurance that everything was going to be okay no matter what happened next. It was like God sent me a text and was like, I got this. And so, needless to say, the numbers had my attention in a big way. So that brings me today. And the original reason for this talk, BJ, which is the minister here, for those who might watch later, asked if I would do a talk on numbers, and specifically the number 3, which I was very grateful for, again, because for the last 4 years, I've gotten really better at seeing numbers, and I see 3s a lot. I see them weekly. Sometimes I see them several days in a row. I'll see 33 paired with a 0, a 1, or 313, or things like that, and they all mean something a little bit different. But leading up to this talk, the communication's been at its highest. There was a time I was driving home from work, and I'm thinking about what I want to say, what's going to reach somebody, or what's the best thing to say, like, God, give me some extra messages. And I drive a lot, so I have free time to do this. And so I saw 333 twice within like 5 minutes, and I kind of smiled and was like, oh, cool, it's a 333 day. And like 30 seconds later, a car with Colorado plates pulls in front of me on one of the streets in town, and the license plate is 333 DAY. I am not even making this up. And I mention this because, I still struggle with this gift, because there's numbers everywhere, and my brain could just be focusing on this stuff. And there are some scientists that actually say that's what's happening. But on the day when the car pulled out in front of me, the message felt very serious. BJ had asked me to give me a talk about this number. I believe in synchronicity, but there's this lingering feeling like something's not right, because most people don't seem to notice this stuff, or if they do, they don't really talk about it, because I never hear people talking about this kind of thing. But it was a strong message, and it had my attention because I have these ideas sometimes, these visions that are grand. Sometimes they're idealistic. But there's one particular lately that's been very strong. It's a vision and a purpose that would require much commitment, a lot of faith. But I believe it would help a lot of people. And since the 333 DAY sighting, I found several journal entries. I went back and I read my journal from a few months ago, and I found several journal entries where I wrote down 333 that I'd noticed while thinking about this particular idea. So now, right now, I'm just going to make a side note that all the references to angel numbers that I give in this talk are going to be from the Sacred Scribes website from Joanne Walmsley, except this next one. I wanted to get a second opinion, and Doreen Virtue is well known in the community in the realm of angel numbers and just in the Ascended Masters, and she writes books and does talks and has a blog and things. And so on her site, she describes 333 this way, and this is in your bulletin. The Ascended Masters are near you, desiring you to know you have their help, love, and companionship. Call upon the Ascended Masters often, especially when you see number 3 patterns around you. Some of the more famous Ascended Masters are Jesus, Mary, Moses, Kuan Yin, and Yogananda. I took that directly from her site. And so honestly, to me, it's still a scary proposition, right? It sounds exciting on one hand, like these people who left a transcendent mark on humankind, they are near me. Like I can achieve anything I want. And on the other hand, it's like, wait a second. You mean Jesus wants to help me? Why? Who am I? Why would these powerful beings that I can't see or verify with my human eyes want to help me? Is my vision that important? But the evidence is too much to ignore, and so I choose to believe and ignore the doubting questions. I can say with confidence that I know the messages are real, that the synchronicity is present when BJ asked me to talk, when before I knew all of you were going to show up, I knew that the people that needed to be here were going to be here. That for the folks that tune in later, that it's all part of a plan that I can't see, I can't understand, and that I can't fathom. And so what is it about the number 3 that is so special? Because each number has its own vibration. Number 1 relates to new beginnings, creating your own reality. Number 2 is duality and faith in your divine life purpose and soul mission. And I'm shortening these a bit. 3 relates to the Trinity, the mind, body, and spirit, the threefold nature of divinity. And it represents growth, expansion, and increase on the physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, and financial levels. When you add numbers together, they carry complex messages. For example, lately I've mentioned this, but I see many 3-digit numbers around, most of them carrying 3s, and I kind of look at them and go, oh, hey, there you are again, 330, 313. But then things happen like what happened on Tuesday. BJ emails me about the program, about my talk, and I've been calling it the 333 talk, and she emails me, and I look at it, and she sent the email at 3:03. And I commented to her about it, but I see that, and I think, whoa, there's no way this is a coincidence. Why do I even still have doubts about all this stuff? It's because it's different, it's not common, and it's hard to verify. Do you want to know what 303 means? Well, we know what the 3 is. It's related to the Trinity, to the threefold nature of mind, body, and spirit. So the number 0 is considered the God force. It magnifies whatever number's with it. So, and it also is a message doing with the spiritual aspects, and is considered to represent the beginning of a spiritual journey, and highlights the uncertainties that it may entail. To Together, Angel 303 is a message that any positive changes or projects you are considering right now will be well worth your while. You will be assisted in their undertaking. Many angels and masters surround you, and you are being offered their guidance and assistance. All you need to do is ask. The angels and ascended masters are waiting to answer your prayers. Again, sounds awesome, and the questions come up. But wait, is the beginning of the journey my numbers talk, or that other thing? Are they connected? The questions are always going to come. I've just learned that the questions are going to come. The main thing I've learned from all of this is that when I have questions about things, these are questions I can't Google to get the answer to, questions that my own experience don't have the answer to. Like, I ask and I get answers through numbers. I don't explain it. It's like flipping on the light switch. I know the light's going to come on. I don't know how it works. It just works. Now, over time, the answers have become easier. Having the online reference does help. But ultimately, it's a translation between me and my angels and the Ascended Masters. Because of this, well, I guess what I've now done is opened up to you and the world that I communicate with angels through numbers. Honestly, this was a hard thing to do. I don't know why it took me so long, but it did. But I know I'm not the only one, and that is very good. I know it's not common. Again, I've struggled with how to kind of talk about it, but I definitely feel better knowing that I finally let this out in the most honest way I know how, which is through experiences. So if you find yourself seeing repetitive numbers, I encourage you, take the time to research what they mean for you individually. Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity, said that angels are the messengers of God. Angels may send you messages through books, songs, animals, offhand comments that a friend or a stranger might say, or through numbers and the messages that the numbers bring. But the one thing about these messages is that they won't come unless you ask. You've got to ask. And so Jeremiah 33:3, and I didn't know about this verse until after I started researching for this talk. And so I really love this. Jeremiah 33:3, not only does it have my name in it, but the verse actually kind of goes along with what Doreen Virtue said, is call to me, and I will answer you and tell you great and unsearchable things you do not know. So that was going to be the end. But last night, real quick, something happened I really have to share. And it'll kind of bring it all together. I had a YouTube loop going of forest scenes where the water's coming down through waterfalls and the rocks and the trees. And it's kind of soothing to my son, and we were playing it, and then he got disinterested, and so I took the computer and I was listening to it on headphones. And a new one came on, and I was listening, and it was really peaceful and quiet, so I went to look, and it was very green, very, very nice forest with green rocks, and it had moss on the green rocks, and the waterfall was falling down the rocks, and then it was just kind of trickling, and it was more like a stream than a river. But when I looked at it, I happened to actually highlight the mouse over it, and I noticed the time, how long this video was. And it was 3 hours and 3 seconds, which is 3:00:03. It's like, that's a lot of God force carrying those threes. And it was just another reminder that, anything's possible. We have help. And the power of God cannot be underestimated, even when it comes to communicating with us. God bless you.